From Washington, this is VOA News. I'm Gia Lee reporting. Britain's process of leaving the European Union is officially underway after British Prime Minister Theresa May triggered Article 50. The formal announcement begins 2 years of negotiations of what promises to be a lengthy and complex process of ending 2 decades of engagement. Speaking before British Parliament's House of Commons, May called it an historic moment from which there can be no turning back.
Mr. Speaker, I know that this is a day of celebration for some and disappointment for others. The referendum last June was divisive at times. Not everyone shared the same point of view or voted the same way. The arguments on both sides were passionate. But, Mr. Speaker, when I sit around the negotiating table in the months ahead, I will represent every person in the United Kingdom, young and old, rich and poor, city, town, country, and all the villages and hamlets in between. And yes, those EU nationals who have made this country their home. It is time to come together.
European Council President Donald Tusk received a letter from the British ambassador to the European Union Wednesday confirming its intention to leave the EU. After receiving the formal notification, Tusk told reporters the other 27 states are now more united and will protect their interests in difficult negotiations before Brexit begins in 2019. Increased activity at North Korea's main nuclear test site during the past few days could mean the country is in final preparations for a 6th nuclear test, a Washington-based think tank reported. 38 North, a website published by the U.S. Korea Institute, released photos of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site taken on Tuesday. This is VOA News. Syrian opposition representatives attending the peace talks report the issue of a transitional government leading to a political settlement to end the country's war has been broached for the first time. Lisa Schlein reports for VOA from the site of the talks in Geneva.
Head of the High Negotiating Committee, Nasser al-Hariri, says his delegation has engaged in serious discussions regarding constitutional changes and an 18-month transitional process leading to UN-supervised elections for a new government. He speaks through an interpreter.
Of course, one session will not be enough to discuss this topic. We hope that the coming meetings we will have further discussions in depth about this topic, and we're hopeful that these discussions will not be wasted. On the contrary, we want to build on them in a way that feeds into the political process to reach a political solution.
Lisa Schlein for VOA News, Geneva.
President Donald Trump is reversing the Obama administration's policies on greenhouse gases. An executive order signed Tuesday takes aim at power plant emission rules and other policies the Trump administration says undermine economic growth. Environmental groups say the president is ignoring the serious threat of climate change and they are planning to push back. VOA's Steve Baragona reports.
In his budget proposal, Trump targets climate change programs across the federal government, says White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney.
Regarding the question as to climate change, I think the president was fairly straightforward. We're not spending money on that anymore. We consider that to be a waste of your money.
The Trump administration is at odds with the scientific consensus that human-made greenhouse gases are dangerously warming the planet. And the federal government has a legal obligation to curb them. Environmental groups are expecting to challenge them in court. Steve Baragona, VOA News, Washington.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte said Wednesday he has asked the U.S. ambassador why America did not deploy warships to pressure China to stop conducting man-made islands that are now at the heart of the regional concerns in the disputed South China Sea. Duterte said in a speech that U.S. Ambassador Sung Kim was unable to reply to that question when they met on Monday in southern Davao City. The president had a separate meeting with the Chinese ambassador there. While criticizing the U.S., Duterte said did not berate China's behavior in his speech. Pope Francis demanded urgent action Wednesday to protect civilians in Iraq, saying forces involved in the battle for Mosul have an obligation to protect those who are innocent. Francis issued a special appeal for peace in Iraq at the end of his general audience. I am Gia Lee in Washington.